What would you do if one day your child ran up, grabbed your hand, pointed toward an alley, and whispered, "Mom, that boy looks exactly like me"? To Isabelle Morgan, a successful CEO and single mother, it sounded like a harmless child's observation. A quirky coincidence any 10-year-old might imagine. But the moment she followed her son Elias's finger, her heart clenched. Across the street stood a scruffy boy, hair-tangled shoes, torn eyes cautious, staring back at Elias. And just as her son said he looked eerily like him, not just the face, but the same birthmark on the left side of the neck. And in that moment, a strange chill ran down Isabelle's spine. Not fear, but instinct. That boy's name was Noel. And although he vanished as quickly as a shadow, the image of him burned into Elias's mind like he had just seen himself. In another world. A world harsher, colder, and lonelier. Isabelle thought she knew everything about her life, about her only son, but in that moment the truths she had trusted began to tremble, and deep in her memory an old name, a faded dream, began to stir. Could it be that everything she knew about Elias's birth was only part of the truth? That night in his spacious room, bathed in warm light, Elias Morgan couldn't sleep. His oversized bed, hundreds of high-end toys, all the things he once took pride in suddenly felt meaningless. The image of the boy by the road Noel haunted Elias like a recurring dream. The tousled blonde hair, pale blue, guarded eyes, chapped hands, reddened by the cold. Every detail etched into his memory. On the other side of the city, Noel curled up behind an old bakery, squeezed between stacked cardboard boxes. The wind cut through his thin hoodie like blades. But it wasn't the cold keeping him awake, it was that boy's face. So clean, so kind, so familiar it scared him. How could he look exactly like me? Noel muttered. No answer. Just the soft whistling of wind scraping against warped tin sheets. The next morning, Isabelle woke from a fractured dream. Somewhere between sleep and waking, a name slipped clearly from her lips, Noel. She placed a hand over her heart. The strange feeling from the day before hadn't left. It wasn't just maternal instinct. It was something deeper, like a memory she had buried but never erased. Elias sat quietly at the breakfast table, swirling his spoon in his eggs. "You okay, sweetheart?" Isabelle asked. He gave a small nod. But in his eyes something had shifted. He would find that boy. Even if it meant breaking every unspoken rule in this family. Monday. School buzzed with its usual chaos. But in Elias Morgan's head, the world was muffled. He couldn't focus on math, couldn't enjoy his lunchtime pizza. All he could think about was Noel, the boy who looked exactly like him. Same eyes. Same bruise under the chin. During recess, Elias pulled aside Mira Collins, his best friend since kindergarten, behind the gym. "You have to promise not to laugh," Elias whispered. Mira raised an eyebrow. "Try me. There's this kid. He looks just like me. I met him yesterday. Hair, eyes, even the birthmark behind the left ear exactly the same." Mira blinked. Silence. "You mean like a clone?" "No." Elias shook his head. "I mean, what if I have a twin brother one? My parents never told me about." "Elias, that's..." Mira hesitated. "Are you sure?" Elias nodded. "I can't explain it, but when I saw him, something inside me ached. Like a part of me that was missing came into focus. Meanwhile, Noel sat behind a convenience store sharing a half-eaten granola bar he'd pulled from the trash with a stray dog. Though hungry, he couldn't bring himself to eat. Why did that boy look like me? Why did his eyes make me feel safe? That night, Noel quietly returned to the alley where he first saw Elias. He didn't know why. He just knew that boy would come back. Night fell. Wind rustled through the trees along Ashfield Hill. The Morgan estate glowed like a luxury hotel in the distance, but in the nearby alley, a skinny figure sat waiting. Noel huddled in the shadows, eyes fixed on the lit windows where Elias might be. Then came soft footsteps. Noel turned. Noel Elias called panting. Beside him was Mira, eyes wide like she'd stepped into a mystery novel. "You came back," Noel whispered, his voice barely wind. "I had to," Elias said. "I have too many questions. I need to know who you are, why you look like me." Mira stepped forward. "Do you have anything from when you were a baby? Something special?" Noel hesitated, then reached into his worn hoodie and pulled out a faded blue cloth frayed at the edges but embroidered in gold E. Elias froze. Without a word, he ran back into the house. 3 minutes later, he returned, breathless, hands trembling, holding an identical cloth aged by time, but embroidered with the letter N. The three of them stared at the scraps side by side, same fabric, same cut, same stitching. E and N. Elias and Noel. No doubt remained. Mira whispered just loud enough for the breeze to carry, "You're two halves of the same torn story." Elias stood frozen, clutching the two scraps of cloth, like they were the last undeniable proof of a truth no one dared to say aloud. From within the estate, the front door creaked open. A tall, commanding man stepped out. Julian Morgan, Elias's father, wore a sharp gray suit, eyes scanning the courtyard with the cold precision of habit. He stopped when he saw Elias standing there beside a street boy and a small girl. "What are you doing out here?" he asked, voice low and even like a blade sliding through air. Elias stepped forward, cloth still in hand. "You know who he is, don't you?" Julian narrowed his eyes. "I don't think I follow." Elias held up both cloth pieces. "He and I, Noel, we each have one of these. Same blanket, same cut, same hospital. He's my brother, Mom's son, and your son too." Julian Morgan didn't move, didn't deny, didn't look surprised. Only his eyes dropped slightly, and when they lifted again, they were colder. "Go inside. This ends now." "No," Elias said, voice shaking. "This is where it begins. What are you hiding? What did you do to him? Why didn't I know I had a brother?" Julian stepped closer, placed a hand on Elias's shoulder, but it no longer felt like a father's touch. "I did what I had to do to protect this family." "He is family," Elias shouted, tears rising in his eyes. Noel instinctively backed away. He knew that look, the look of adults who didn't want him to exist. Mira stepped forward, shielding the boys. "You can't hide this forever. The truth has a way of being seen." Julian looked at the three children, then without a word turned and slammed the door shut behind him, just like he had once sealed away a piece of the past he never wanted to face. Elias stood there, heart-pounding, body hollow. But one thing was clear. The truth had begun to speak, and he would not let it be silenced again. That night, the Morgan mansion was unnervingly quiet. The ticking of the grandfather clock echoed like a heartbeat down the hallway. Each second felt like it carved another question into Elias's soul. He sat alone in his room, 2 pieces of cloth laid before him. His fingers traced the golden letters E and N, Elias and Noel. At the end of the hall, Isabelle Morgan had just returned from a business trip. She hadn't even removed her coat when she sensed something was wrong. "Where's Elias?" she asked softly. The housekeeper hesitated. "In his room, ma'am." "But he's upset." Isabelle knocked. No response. She opened the door and met her son's gaze, eyes red hard, unfamiliar. "I know everything," Elias said. "Know what?" Isabelle whispered. But her heart was already racing. "I met a boy named Noel. He looks exactly like me, and he has a blanket scrap, just like mine. You know who he is, don't you?" Isabelle sank onto the bed. Her lips pressed tightly together, but her eyes betrayed the truth. "You used to have a twin brother," she murmured. Elias's voice cracked. "Used to. I felt you both from the beginning. Heard 2 heartbeats. I knew I wasn't wrong. Then why did Noel grow up on the street? And I got all this." Isabelle gripped her son's hands. Tears began to fall. "I didn't know you were separated. I gave birth early. Everything was chaos. When I woke up, they said only 1 baby survived. I asked, I begged, but your father Julian said I was hallucinating, that there was only 1. "And you believed him," Elias whispered. "At first, no, but over the years. The silence, the missing files, the strange looks. I began to doubt myself. I thought, was I imagining things? Was I crazy?" Her voice broke. Elias stood. "He sold." "Noel, didn't he?" Isabelle didn't answer, but her eyes, soaked in sorrow, heavy with guilt, said everything. "I don't know. But I believe it now, and I won't let it stay hidden. Not 1 second longer." The sky was gray. Clouds blanketed the city like a heavy worn quilt. A street corner near the soup kitchen bustled with motion, but Noel sat still on a weathered bench holding a boxed meal he hadn't touched. He wasn't hungry. Not really. What he feared more than hunger was hope. Hope that the bond with Elias meant something. Hope that he could be someone's son. A black car pulled up. Soft brakes. The door opened. Out stepped Isabelle Morgan, long coat-polished heels, refined, dignified, but eyes rimmed with tears. "Noel," she said softly, voice trembling. Noel stood up instinctively, taking a step back. But when he met her gaze, he saw no judgment, no pity, just a pain that looked too familiar, a love that had never been spoken. "I'm Isabelle Morgan," she said, hands shaking. "Elias's mother, and your mother too." The world stood still. Noel froze. "We did a DNA test." She continued pulling a folded paper from her coat. The results came in this morning. Elias had it rushed. Noel looked at the paper, then back at her. "You're my mom," he whispered as if to himself. Isabelle didn't speak. She nodded, then knelt in front of him right there on the sidewalk, expensive coat be damned. She said, "I'm so sorry. I'm sorry I wasn't there when you needed me. I didn't know you were alive, but you were never gone from my heart." Noel trembled. Something inside him, wound tight for years, finally broke open. He lunged into her arms. No words, no conditions. Just an embrace. And tears. For the first time in 12 years, Noel was held like someone's son. That evening, Noel stepped over the threshold of the Morgan estate for the very first time in his life. Cold marble floors beneath his feet, warm golden light spilling from the chandeliers above. Everything was foreign, except for the hand holding his. Isabelle didn't let go. Not once. At the top of the grand staircase, Elias was already waiting. When he saw Noel, he ran down full speed and threw his arms around the boy who had once only lived in his questions and dreams. "Told you I'd find you," Elias whispered. Noel nodded slightly. No words, just a small, fragile smile, but enough to light up the whole foyer. On the nightstand upstairs sat 2 pieces of baby blanket, one marked E, the other N. They were no longer evidence. They were symbols of 2 lives finally made whole after years torn apart. A week later, city headlines exploded. Julian Morgan, high-profile businessman and founder of the Morgan Row Financial Group, was arrested after investigators uncovered falsified medical records, illegal newborn transfer documents, hidden offshore accounts and slush funds. It was revealed that Noel had been disposed of like surplus inventory, orchestrated by Julian to erase what he considered a liability. Isabelle filed for divorce, surrendered everything to the law, and stepped down from her CEO role. To the press, she simply said, "No title is worth more than being a whole mother." Noel started school. He shared a room with Elias not because he had to, but because neither wanted to be apart. Morning brought warm toast. Evening came with bedtime stories. Noel began to believe in having a home again, and Elias learned to share what mattered most: family. One afternoon, as the boys watched old videotapes of Elias as a baby, Noel leaned in and asked, "If none of this had happened, do you think we'd still be this close?" Elias smiled. "I don't know, but I do know this. I wouldn't want any other brother but you. What would you do? If you discovered you had a twin, one who was sold forgotten, denied, would you forgive? Would you fight for the truth? Maybe it's both." If this story moved you, comment truth below and let us know what country you're watching from. And don't forget to share, because somewhere out there someone might still be looking for the other half they never knew they lost.